931 words, within the 5% tolerance of 900. Here's the script. In 1978, a single paragraph was buried inside a 900-page tax bill signed into law on Capitol Hill, and to this day, no one in Congress has ever admitted writing it. No sponsor, no hearing, no debate on the record, just 3 sentences tucked into subsection K that would quietly rewrite how 100 million Americans retire. By the end of this, you'll understand why the people who buried it never wanted it found. The bill was the Revenue Act of 1978. Jimmy Carter signed it that November, and almost nobody who voted for it read past the summary. It ran 900 pages. It touched capital gains, corporate depreciation, foreign tax credits, the ordinary machinery of federal tax law. Buried near the back in a section meant to close a loophole around executive cash bonuses sat a new clause. Section 401, subsection K. On paper, it did one small thing. It let an employee defer part of a paycheck into a retirement account before taxes touched it. That's all. No press conference. No name attached. Just a clerk's footnote in the congressional record filed and forgotten. 2 years passed. Then in 1980, a benefits consultant in Pennsylvania named Ted Benna sat down with the actual text of subsection K, not the summary, the text, and realized something the drafters may never have intended. The wording didn't just cover executive bonuses. It was broad enough to let any company convert its entire retirement plan into one funded by employee paychecks instead of company pensions. Benna built the first plan around it. The IRS approved it in 1981 with almost no public comment. Within a decade, thousands of employers had quietly stopped funding traditional pensions and shifted the risk, market risk, outliving your money, the whole burden, onto the employees themselves. A clause meant to plug one small hole in the tax code had become the legal foundation for dismantling the American pension system. And nobody in the room that drafted it in 1978 has ever gone on record explaining whether that was the plan all along. The official explanation, when anyone bothers to give one, is that it was an accident, a drafting quirk, discovered and exploited by a clever consultant, nothing more. Treasury officials have repeated some version of that story for over 40 years, but the story falls apart under one detail. Subsection K wasn't written by a junior staffer working alone. Tax bills of that size move through committee markup, where language gets vetted line by people whose entire job is to know exactly what each clause enables. For a provision this consequential to slip through unnoticed, either the review process failed completely, or it didn't fail at all. And there's no surviving record of who actually drafted the final language, which in a chamber that keeps transcripts of nearly everything is itself unusual. Here's what nobody puts in the retirement seminars. In 1975, 3 years before that clause was written, corporate lobbying groups had already begun pushing Congress privately for a way out of defined benefit pension obligations, which were becoming a growing liability on company balance sheets as workers lived longer. Internal actuarial memos from that period, later surfaced in congressional testimony during the 1980s, show benefits consultants advising major employers to watch for legislative openings that could shift retirement funding off the company ledger. Subsection K arrived 3 years later, worded broadly enough to do exactly that, attached to a bill so large almost no one read the fine print, sponsored by no one willing to put their name on it. And here's what makes it impossible to call an accident. The Treasury Department issued proposed regulations on subsection K within months of Benna's 1981 plan, meaning officials weren't confused about what the clause allowed. They understood it immediately, and they let it stand. By 1985, defined benefit pension coverage among private sector workers had already begun its permanent decline, a decline that has never reversed. Somewhere between 1975 and 1978, a request made in private became 3 sentences buried in public law, and the paper trail connecting the two has never been fully released. Think about what that shift actually meant. A traditional pension put the risk on the employer. If the market fell, the company had to make up the difference. A 401k put that risk on you. If you didn't understand the market, if you couldn't afford to contribute enough, if you retired the year everything crashed, that was now your problem, written into law by a clause almost no one remembers voting for. Corporations saved hundreds of billions of dollars in long-term pension obligations over the following decades. Financial firms built an entire industry, worth trillions today, managing the accounts that subsection K made possible. The people who benefited most from that quiet paragraph were never the workers it was marketed to. And the fewer people who understood how deliberately it might have been placed there, the smoother that transfer of risk went, from balance sheets that could afford it, onto paychecks that couldn't. So ask yourself the question Congress never had to answer. If subsection K really was an accident, why did Treasury move so fast to bless it? And why does no drafting record survive to say who wrote it? And if it wasn't an accident, if someone knew exactly what those 3 sentences would do to 100 million retirements, why, after nearly 50 years, has no one ever come forward to say so?